Due to the recent events of financial market, the government has had to intervene with several firms and different industries to prevent further collapse. For our presentation, we've decided to take a closer look at what happens when the government takes an ownership stake in a company. We'll give you a little recent background information about the three companies we've chosen to look at, how the government got involved with them, what they have promised to do within the companies, what the government stands to gain from the ownership stake, and how they plan to exit. The three companies we're going to look at are AIG, Bank of America, and General Motors.
Hi, I'm Lilia Kim.
And I'm Jessica Boyette.
And we're going to be talking about AIG.
Hi, my name's Heidi Kiesel, here with Wes Allen.
And we're live from Detroit Rock City.
Hey, I'm Josh Bagby, here with Tish LeCoute.
And we're going to be talking about Bank of America, live from Times Square.
On September 16th of 2008, the Federal Reserve Board, acting through the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, pledged $85 billion to AIG. AIG had posted huge losses from their credit default swaps. A subsequent decrease in their credit rating forced them to post more collateral which they could not raise by themselves. As part of the deal, the government received a 79.9% equity interest in the firm. The equity interest was in the form of equity participation notes. These notes are like debt, but the payout at maturity is based on the stock price. It's like a combination of a zero coupon bond and an equity option. The second bailout was October 8th of 2008, and the Fed pledged another $37.8 billion to AIG. On November 10th, AIG received a lower interest rate from the government and an extra 3 years to pay back the loan. This caused the package to grow to $150 billion. AIG is not directly regulated by the federal government, yet this marks the first time the government controlled a private insurer. The Federal Reserve Act allows the government to lend to non-banks only under unusual and exigent circumstances. The government intervened when they felt that the collapse of AIG could affect the money market mutual funds, which are considered to be the safest investments in the market. This, in turn, could be a domino effect, affecting other assets in the marketplace since many investors hold AIG mutual funds.
So, what happened with the bailout money? On September 22nd, 2008, AIG filed an 8K form with the SEC detailing retention program payable to the executives on December of 08 and 09. The Treasury seeks to reverse the bonuses paid out by saying they are inconsistent with the purpose of TARP program and contrary to the public interest. AIG argues that the retention money would be vital to company success by keeping the key execs aboard. March 18, 2009, AIG CEO Liddy testified before the House Financial Services Committee that he has asked employees at AIG's Financial Products Division to step up and return at least half of the payments. This brings up a good point about corporate and government shared decision making. In a way, there's an agency problem with AIG representing shareholders and government representing public interest. How to best run a corporation may not be consistent with both of the parties.
On July 15, 2008, GM announced the company's initial restructuring plans. They were to cut costs by $10 billion, suspend the company's stock dividend, and sell up to $4 billion in assets. GM hopes these moves will help offset high fuel costs, a consumer shift away from low-mileage trucks, and the weakest U.S. auto sales in a decade.
In December, former CEO Rick Wagner told Congress that the Detroit-based automaker GM were lacking the minimum $11 billion needed to pay the bills by the end of the month, which would raise the possibility of bankruptcy. GM then received $13.4 billion in emergency government loans from the Bush administration's $700 billion Troubled Asset Relief Program. But with this, the loan came with a March 31st, 2009 contingency plan for GM to announce the restructuring of the company.
With GM experiencing its lowest sales volume in 27 years, the company asked the government for another $16.6 billion in government loans. GM plans to step up its cost cutting by reducing its global workforce by close to 50,000 jobs and shutting down 5 plants in the United States by 2012.
On March 29, 2009, GM's chief executive Rick Wagner resigned under the pressure of Barack Obama and his administration. This was an unseen event, especially considering his resignation came just 2 days before the company was supposed to submit its final plans for restructuring. This led to the former COO, Fritz Henderson, was named GM's new CEO.
With the naming of the new CEO, Barack Obama has given GM a 60-day restructuring plan that expires at the end of May 2009. GM plans to cut several brands including Hummer, Saab, Saturn, and Pontiac. Look for the new GM to include Chevrolet, Cadillac, Buick, and GMC. GM has received close to $35 billion in government loans and may still end up in bankruptcy.
Bank of America is the second largest bank in the United States, just behind Citigroup, and is based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Like most of the banks in the United States, Bank of America got caught up lending to subprime mortgagees. Bank of America and AIG helped lead each other to where they are at today. Banks are required to maintain a regulatory capital requirement, but they found a loophole around holding the risky subprime mortgagees on their books. Bank of America would make a loan to a subprime candidate, and instead of holding the risk on their balance sheets, they would purchase credit default swaps from AIG. A credit default swap is exactly what the name implies. Bank of America would let AIG take the risk on their loan, and in return, AIG would receive fees from Bank of America. When the housing market was booming and everything was appreciating, it appeared like these assets were completely risk-free. Of course, we all know what happened.
As if the risky assets they already had weren't enough, Bank of America decided to purchase Countrywide Financial, which is the nation's leading mortgage lender, in August of 2007. With this merger, Bank of America would own a 20 to 25% market share in mortgages in the United States. But the FBI currently has Countrywide under investigation for loan fraud. In response, Bank of America created a subsidiary lender to merge with Countrywide to contain a potential bankruptcy due to the investigation if it occurred. In the fall of 2008, Bank of America received a much-needed $25 billion in TARP funds to help them shore up their assets.
In September of 2008, Bank of America agreed to purchase Merrill Lynch and become the largest financial service firm in the world. After the deal was completed on January 1st of 2009, it was discovered that Merrill Lynch was going to post losses of $21 billion in the fourth quarter of 2008. Bank of America tried to stop the deal, but they were pressured by the U.S. government to allow it. With the Merrill Lynch losses, it was absolutely necessary for the government to step in and prop up the banks until they could shore up their assets. When the earnings were announced in 2009, Bank of America market cap dropped below the $50 billion it offered the Merrill Lynch in their deal, and was down $108 billion since their announcements of the merger.
Bank of America was in serious need of some help. The government stepped in again on January 16, 2009, and offered them an additional $20 billion of the second wave of TARP funds. The government also guaranteed $118 billion in potential losses the company may sustain. In return, the government received $45 billion worth of preferred equity shares, which usually don't carry voting rights, capped the executive to pay at $500,000, and if the executive is paid more than $500,000, the company will incur more taxes, and forced Bank of America to reduce its quarterly dividend from 32 cents a share to a penny, and it can't raise that dividend for 3 years. The government also requires a high level of transparency with what the bank is doing with the funds. Most of the banks, including Bank of America, that have received TARP funds are trying to repay them as quickly as possible. They don't like the idea of having the U.S. government having large stakes in their companies. While having the government involved can be somewhat of a nuisance for the banks, it's definitely buying them some time while confidence is restored with private investors, which will hopefully bring their money back to the market and put us that much closer to getting the financial system back on track.